I hadn't planned to attend my brother's wedding, not because I didn't care he was family after all, but because I knew exactly how the night would unfold. I could see it before I even got there. The polished silverware, the white orchids on every table, the string quartet playing some overpriced arrangement, and me, somewhere in the background, invisible. But my wife insisted we go. "You'll regret it if you don't," she said, trying to make it sound like concern. Maybe she was right. Or maybe she just didn't want to be the only one absent. The ballroom in Austin looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. Velvet-draped tables, waiters in tuxedos, chandeliers glistening like wedding rings. My brother William beamed in his three-piece custom suit. My parents floated around him like satellites orbiting the star. And then there was me, crammed at the kids' table, surrounded by cousins still in braces and awkward teenage acne. Someone actually asked me to pass the crayons. I glanced across the room and caught my father-in-law's eyes. He gave me the kind of look men give to boys they don't respect. Chin tilted up, half a smile, arms crossed like a judge. He raised his glass toward the head table and said, "Just loud enough. This one, Harvard Law millionaire before 30, now married into our family. A real man." He wasn't talking about me. And even though it was barely a whisper beneath the music and laughter, I heard it clear. Not like the other one. I knew what he meant. Years ago at Thanksgiving, I remember suggesting an idea for a side hustle, an app for connecting tradespeople with clients. The room went quiet like I'd told a bad joke. My uncle coughed into his wine. My father looked up from the turkey and muttered, "Stick to your job, son. Not everyone's made to lead." The room chuckled. I didn't. That was the first time someone called me a disappointment, out loud at least. My mom tried to smooth it over afterward, saying, "Don't stir the pot, honey. It's just how they talk." But that night stayed with me. I learned to keep my head down. Smile, nod, don't argue. Let them think what they want. It's easier that way. William thrived under that spotlight. I helped him study for his SATs while he went out to parties. I proofread his law school essays. He made it to Harvard. I made it to the sidelines. And now, years later at his wedding, I watched as my name wasn't mentioned in any of the toasts. Not once. When they handed out thank you gifts for the pillars of support, my name was conveniently forgotten. And then came the real blow, the toast. My father-in-law stood up, champagne in hand, and said, "Not everyone gets to be a Harvard grad or a business tycoon, but every family has that one member who teaches us patience." Laughter, loud. Around me, eyes darted in my direction like heat-seeking missiles. I smiled, forced it. My wife squeezed my hand under the table, not comfort, more like pity, like you'd give a wounded animal. I let go of her hand and got up. In the restroom, I stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked like a stranger, tie a little crooked, shirt not quite crisp, tired eyes. "Am I really useless?" I whispered, "or have I just been too quiet for too long?" Outside, after the ceremony, the cool night air hit me like a slap. I made my way toward the parking lot, just trying to breathe. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. "Son," my father-in-law called. He lit a cigarette, didn't offer me one. "You know," he said, exhaling, "there's two kinds of men in this world. Leaders and dreamers. Leaders get things done. Dreamers, they just take up space." I didn't say a word. "My daughter deserves a leader," he added, eyes squinting through the smoke. "Not a man who's still trying to figure things out at your age." I clenched my fists in my pockets. The words burned, but I didn't let them show, just looked him in the eye. "You'll see," I said. His smirk faltered just for a second. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio, didn't speak to my wife, who sat beside me, silently swiping through wedding photos. I thought about all the nights I stayed late at the office while everyone else went out, the weekends I spent teaching myself coding, reading business books, building something out of nothing. I'd never bragged, never needed applause, but maybe I'd been too quiet. Maybe I let them believe the silence meant failure. They didn't know me, not really. And that wedding? That would be the last time anyone ever looked down on me. After that wedding, I didn't scream. I didn't fight back. I didn't flip tables or storm out. I just got quiet. But not the kind of quiet they thought. Not defeated, not passive, not retreating. My quiet was focused. It was built in the dark, in silence, while they were too busy laughing at each other's toast to notice. They thought I was shrinking. What I was really doing was sharpening. I went back to my routine, kept my head down at the hardware store by day, stocking shelves, cleaning break rooms, fixing broken lighting in the back aisles. Then, come evening, I'd drive to the public library, sit under that humming fluorescent light, open my secondhand laptop, and study torts and civil procedure like it was oxygen. I was working toward my law degree part-time. I didn't tell anyone. Not one of them ever asked why I was up past 3 a.m. most nights. They just assumed I had nothing going on, that I was just drifting while William flew first class to Bora Bora and posted about board meetings from penthouses. They had no idea that while he was sipping cocktails, I was sipping instant ramen in a dark kitchen, redlining case briefs with a highlighter I borrowed from the library. I saved every extra dollar, cut out coffee, new shoes, nights out. I wasn't building a career, I was building armor. And every late-night webinar, every quiet hour studying contracts while others slept, was one more plate bolted to my chest. They had no idea. Family dinners were the worst. I'd bring up a thought, maybe a policy shift in zoning law, or a tax loophole I'd studied, and they'd glance past me like I hadn't spoken. William's wife Lindsay would smile politely, ask for more detail, then repeat it a week later like it was hers. At a barbecue, she stood in front of 20 people and pitched my idea as a way to help their real estate firm. Not a word about where it came from. And my father-in-law, he never missed a beat. Daydreamer, he'd say, chuckling like it was a nickname, always chasing clouds, never cash. I'd nod, smile. It was easier, safer. Until the day I found out they used one of my legal strategies, one I'd worked on for months during a business dispute over a zoning ordinance. They didn't just use it, they won a settlement with it. I only found out because I read the firm's newsletter Lindsay accidentally forwarded to my inbox. No one told me. No one thanked me. That's when it hit me. They didn't think I was useless. They knew I was useful. They just liked it better when I stayed invisible. A few weeks later, I walked into a quiet coffee shop off South Lamar. I wasn't there for caffeine, just needed Wi-Fi and a change of air. That's when I saw them, my wife and her sister sitting at a corner table. I stopped just inside, out of their line of sight. They were laughing, softly, relaxed. And then I heard it. I don't think he'll ever really do anything big, you know? Her sister said, stirring her latte. My wife giggled. Yeah, she said, he's just him. They didn't say it with venom, just with resignation, like it was a given, like I was a dog that wouldn't learn a new trick, and they'd just decided to live with it. I didn't confront them, didn't say a word. I just turned, walked out, sat in my truck for a long time with my keys in my hand, and nothing moving inside me but the echo of her voice. Sometimes it's not the words they say, it's the silence they expect afterward. That was the last moment I let their opinions define the pace of my life. That night, I quit my side job. No notice, no announcement, just a quiet resignation email sent from my kitchen table. I had a plan. I'd been building toward it for years. A private consultancy, one client at a time, not loud, not flashy, just mine. I didn't tell anyone, not even my wife, because silence, it had become my strategy. They call me useless. I chose to be underestimated. By late 2020, my body was running on fumes. My days bled into nights. Client files stacked in the corner of my apartment, empty takeout boxes lining the counter. I had managed to win a small legal case for a local contractor, my first victory under my own name, no family attached. It should have felt like a turning point, but it didn't. No one knew. No one asked. I sat cross-legged on my living room floor with a burger going cold, case notes spread out around me, and thought, nobody claps for you when you're building alone. The more victories I quietly gathered, the wider the gap grew between who I was becoming and who they still believed I was. I was no longer the man they mocked at Thanksgiving, but the applause kept going to someone else. That night, staring at my laptop screen, I felt the first real crack of frustration harden into something sharper. Not rage, not despair. A plan. A few days later came Sunday brunch at my brother's place. Another spread of champagne glasses and polite laughter. I stayed at the edge of the room, nodding at people I barely knew. My brother had a client there, a real estate developer, who raised his glass and thanked William publicly for a brilliant legal strategy that had saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was mine. Every clause, every loophole, every footnote, mine. I had emailed it to William weeks before, as a favor, thinking it would just help him prep for a meeting. He hadn't even changed the formatting. I glanced at my wife. She looked down at her plate. Not a word, not a defense, not a hint of acknowledgement. Everyone clapped. My father-in-law laughed loudest. Inside my head, what they call success is just theft with better manners. I set my fork down, drank some water, and left early, slipping out the door like a ghost. No one stopped me. No one noticed. That night I called Leon. We hadn't talked in months. He was one of the few who knew me before all this, back when I still believed people could change. We met up at a small diner off the interstate, both of us hunched over coffee like two men on parole. "You're burning yourself alive in silence," he said. "Why not take the bar already?" "I'm not ready," I said automatically. He smirked. "Ready?" I wasn't ready to rebuild after my divorce. I wasn't ready to file bankruptcy, but I did. Some of us aren't meant to be saved. We survive until it's time. His words stuck. They weren't sympathy. They were a mirror. That night, lying awake, I decided I would apply for the state bar, quietly. No announcements, no fanfare. Let success speak. I started laying the groundwork in secret, registered a limited liability company under my own name, rented a virtual office address downtown, built a spreadsheet of potential clients from referrals I'd collected over the years. Each small step was a brick. Each brick was a wall. "They'll remember my silence," I wrote in my notebook, not as submission, but preparation. One evening, I came home late from a library session. A single envelope sat on the kitchen counter, my name typed neatly across it. It was from the state bar, but it was open. My wife was sitting at the table, the letter unfolded in her hands. She didn't look at me. Her face said more than words ever could. She didn't say a word when I walked in. The letter was already open, the envelope torn neatly across the top like someone had been careful, too careful. I looked at her. "You opened it?" Her voice was casual, too light. I thought it was a bill, didn't check the name. But her eyes told the truth. She knew. She knew what the letter meant. And more importantly, she knew before I did. That kind of mistake isn't accidental. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't even press her, just nodded. I've learned over time, silence gives people room to reveal who they are. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. She wasn't just a bystander. It wasn't the letter that broke something in me. It was the confirmation that she'd probably told her father, maybe her brother too. I just stood there watching her pretend to shuffle papers on the counter. Inside, my thoughts were sharp, precise. The loudest revenge is executed in silence. Later that night, just past 10, my phone lit up with a call from my father-in-law. "Evening, son," he said, that artificial warmth oozing through the speaker. "Heard you got a letter. State bar, huh? That's big news. Just wanted to check in on how you're feeling about all that." I let him talk. He went on a while, asking if I'd really thought through the workload, the stress, the responsibility. "You know, not everyone's cut out for that kind of thing," he said with a chuckle that wasn't even masked. "You've always been creative. Dreamers don't always make the best lawyers." There it was, the real message beneath the false concern. Stay in your lane. I smiled even though he couldn't see it. "Appreciate you checking in," I said, really. He ended the call the same way he always did. "Just looking out for you." I hung up and sat in silence. They never attack head on. They nudge, they suggest, they plant seeds. all under the banner of family. But I remember another time, 6 years back, when I was up for a position at a small firm downtown. The hiring manager had seemed interested until I got a polite email declining the offer. Later, I found out my father-in-law had spoken to the managing partner off the record. Something about me being a bit too idealistic. He'd smiled when he told me, like he'd done me a favor. It wasn't a one-time slip. It was a pattern. Control dressed up as care. I drove out to meet Leon the next afternoon. Same diner, same booth. I told him everything this time. No half-truths. His face didn't flinch. They don't want you to leave the box they put you in. You step out, they won't try to pull you back in. They'll try to erase the box completely. I nodded. I need your help, I said. Quiet referrals, word of mouth only. I've got the LLC. The name's registered. This is real now. Leon leaned back. You sure you're ready? No, I answered. But I'm doing it anyway. That night after the diner, I parked in front of my place and sat there with the engine running. My phone buzzed. A text. From her. Dad wants to talk again. Please be respectful this time. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. Then I locked the phone and let it fall to the passenger seat. Respect is earned, not demanded. And tonight, I decided to earn mine back. When I got home that night, the lights were off, the living room quiet except for the low hum of the fridge. On the counter, a yellow Post-it note leaned against a bottle of vitamins. Her handwriting. There's leftovers in the fridge. Don't wake me. The note might as well have been a lock on the bedroom door. I heated up the chicken, sat at the table alone. Fork in one hand, phone in the other. Not checking texts, just reading the same contract draft I'd printed earlier that morning. Small legal consultancy, big potential. The trademarks were filed, the EIN was active, and my first client had signed off. Leon's words replayed in my head like a warning label. They'll try to destroy you, but not loudly, with politeness and pressure. I stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window and thought, being ignored isn't always peace. Sometimes it's tactical erosion, and I was done eroding. The next morning, I sent her a message. Let's grab coffee. There's something I need to say. She replied, fine, 6 p.m., Townies. No emoji, no warmth. Townies was neutral ground, dingy booths, decent coffee, always half empty. She showed up 10 minutes late, barely looked up from her phone as she slid into the booth. I didn't waste time. I'm officially bar certified, I said, a shrug. Okay. I've started my own firm, fully registered, first client signed, more coming. She stirred her coffee like she didn't hear. I won't be showing up to any more family dinners as the silent seat filler. At that, she glanced up. Dad thinks it's a phase. I didn't flinch. Here's what it is, I said calmly, pulling out the binder I brought. This is my projected revenue. Here's my overhead, contracts, referrals, licenses. This is not a phase. This is the rest of my life. She blinked slowly, her mouth set in a practiced smirk. So what? You want a parade? No, I said. I want to make this clear. You don't have to support me, but you don't get to sabotage me. Silence. Then she stood up, grabbed her coat. You done? I nodded. She didn't say goodbye, just left. The check sat on the table between the two coffee mugs. I paid it without hesitation. Something about that moment felt final, even if nothing had officially ended. By the time I got home, my half of the closet had been emptied. Shirts folded, jackets stacked, not thrown, just moved into the guest room. I stood there for a minute, not surprised, not angry, just tired. I sat on the bed, opened my journal and wrote, Silence is no longer my currency. I didn't tell anyone, not Leon, not even my brother. But I started mapping out the emotional logistics of separation, just in case, because deep down I wasn't fighting them anymore. I was fighting the version of me who accepted less than he deserved. A few days later, my phone buzzed. A payment notification, referral from a contact. Leon had passed along. Small job, a few hours of legal work. I looked at the amount, closed the app, and walked to my desk, printed the invoice, pinned it to the wall. No champagne, no selfies, just a single thought in my head. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving I was never wrong about myself. Later that night, I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed again. It was from my brother-in-law. Heard you're acting like a CEO now. Let's talk. Tomorrow. Family only. I wasn't sure if it was a threat or an invitation, but either way, I was done being quiet. The message came just after dusk. My brother-in-law's name flashed across my phone with a single line, "Family only dinner. Dad wants to clear the air." No question mark, no courtesy. Just an invitation shaped like an order. I set the phone down and stared at the stack of client folders on my desk. Leon's words echoed again. "They'll try to destroy you, but not loudly," with politeness and pressure. I reached for the printer, pulled out the first quarter projections for my practice, my Texas bar card resting on top like a quiet bullet. This time I wouldn't walk in empty-handed. I told myself, I'll speak only if silence becomes complicit. Locking the front door, I took one deep breath of the cold night. The highway south stretched out like a ribbon. As the city lights shifted to dark fields, I whispered my own mantra. Sometimes you walk into a storm because you've become the thunder. Houston's suburbs were bright under porch lights when I arrived. Cars lined the driveway, polished and orderly. Through the window, I saw white tablecloths, wine glasses, my wife moving like a shadow from chair to chair. She glanced up as I opened the door, then quickly looked away. "Glad you made it," her brother muttered, stepping aside. Inside, everyone was dressed too formally for a weeknight meal. Her father sat at the head of the table, hands folded like a judge about to pronounce sentence. I took my seat at the far end. They didn't start with food, they started with words. My brother-in-law opened with a practiced sigh. "We're worried about you," he said, listing patterns of failure from years ago. Her father praised my creativity but called it misdirected energy. He leaned forward, explaining he had arranged a secure job with a friend at a large firm. Benefits, stability, a chance to grow up. My wife sat silent, eyes fixed on her plate. Not once did anyone ask what I wanted. Their concern felt rehearsed. It was a verdict disguised as dinner. I listened, hands folded, expression neutral. Watched their choreography. Concern delivered like an ultimatum, silence presented as support. Finally, when the room went quiet, I slid my folder onto the table. "Thank you," I said, tone flat but sharp, "for your concern." I spread out the projections, client letters, and my bar license card. "This is the last time you'll speak of my future without me present in it." They stared at the papers like they were written in another language. My wife's knuckles whitened around her napkin. "The only reason you're reacting now," I added, "is because I succeeded without needing your name." Her father's face flushed. Her brother looked at the floor. No one spoke. Then the snap came. "You're arrogant now. This will come back to you," her father barked. I stood, sliding the papers back into my bag. "If building something of my own is arrogance," I said quietly, "I pray more of it." No shouting, no drama. Just the scrape of my chair across their polished floor. I walked through the hallway lined with family portraits, past the smell of untouched food, and out into the cool night. By the time I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A text from my wife. "You humiliated them." I stared at the screen for a moment and typed back, "They earned it." I started the engine. The headlights caught something on my dashboard. A plain envelope, no stamp, no name, just 4 words in block letters. "You should be careful." I held it for a moment. The paper felt thin, but the warning was heavy. For the first time that evening, my pulse slowed instead of raced. The bridge was gone behind me, and it didn't feel like loss. The Crow Holdings headquarters looked more like a press theater that night than a boardroom. Big glass walls reflecting camera lights, velvet ropes outside, hushed conversations in tailored suits. The email I'd received 2 days prior called this a routine quarterly shareholder session. It wasn't. As I stepped inside, I saw the signs immediately. Crow Holdings special announcement. Media crews stood in corners, lights already rolling. And there I was, quietly ushered in as an observer. No nameplate at the table, no welcome nod, just a seat, back row. I sat down, scanned the room. A few familiar faces from the early days of the company. Older, more polished now. Most didn't meet my eye, except for Gideon. His expression was unreadable, cold but alert. My wife sat on the opposite end, lips pressed tight. She avoided looking my way. They opened with fluff. Department reports, projected revenue curves. Nothing urgent. But everyone in that room knew it was theater. The real act was waiting backstage. Every time a new speaker was introduced, they got a title: Executive Vice President, Head of Strategy, Lead Counsel. When they got to me, silence. I folded my hands, kept still. I'd learned something since the last time I sat in this building. Silence unsettles the ones who expect noise. They were expecting a protest. I gave them patience. Then came the turn. The chairman stood and cleared his throat. "We'd like to pivot to a new strategic initiative," he said. "A merger proposal with Paramount Horizons, effective immediately." I felt it before I heard it, an orchestrated maneuver. I leaned forward slightly. "Due to structural realignments," he continued, "we have reclassified certain minority stakes. Specifically, Mr. Cortland's holdings are now categorized as non-voting, per Amendment 5B, subsection 4. I blinked. There it was. Stripped. Just like that. No debate, no vote. Just a slide with my name in grayscale. Excluded participant. Gasps rippled around the room, barely audible but there. A few investors whispered to one another. My wife's hands folded tightly in her lap. Her brother glanced over, then quickly away. Gideon didn't move a muscle. The chairman kept talking, but I wasn't listening. I just kept my eyes on the screen. Something inside me didn't twist, didn't break. It settled, like a final puzzle piece. I raised my hand. "I'd like to request a recess." He hesitated. "We're not required to." "Then let's call it a courtesy," I said, already rising. The hallway outside the boardroom was silent. I leaned against the marble wall, pulled out my phone, and opened a folder labeled Contingency D. Inside, email chains, time-stamped amendments, notarized stock agreements. My shares weren't just active. They were protected under Clause 3.2 of the founding charter. They'd tried to cut me out, but they left. Fingerprints. I walked back in, calm. When the chairman nodded toward me again, I stood. Before I issue any response, I've asked my legal team to review the proposed changes on record. I believe you'll find some irregularities. I placed the documents on the table with quiet precision. A shift moved through the room. Not panic, just a hairline crack in the performance. Executives glanced at one another. Someone adjusted their tie too fast. Gideon's jaw clenched. The meeting adjourned 20 minutes later. Fast, clipped. No champagne, no smiles, just discomfort. As I stepped into the corridor, Gideon followed. "Smart move," he said, "but you can't undo what's already declared." I didn't break stride. "You can declare," I replied, "but you can't dictate truth." I nodded to my assistant, who handed him a sealed packet, our injunction filing stamped and ready. His smirk faded. Just as we passed the atrium, my phone buzzed. News alerts. Crow Holdings' press page had gone live with a quote attributed to me. "We believe transparency is not a courtesy, but a legal obligation. Any restructuring done in shadows will be brought to light." Outside, the crowd had grown. Microphones, questions, flashes. I moved through them silently until I reached the curb. The car door opened. I sat inside, closed it, and exhaled. Another buzz. Text from an unknown number. "Dad has released proof that you engineered the company's downturn. Check the link." I stared at the screen. 1 second. Then 2. In front of me, the boardroom I just walked out of. Behind me, a lie big enough to drown in. Do I chase the truth, or let the lie speak louder? The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I hadn't turned the TV on, hadn't even bothered to take off my shoes. I sat on the edge of the couch, laptop open, cursor blinking in that damned anonymous message from earlier. Check the link. Now. I clicked it. At first it looked like a typical folder directory, but then the files began to load, one by one, all bearing my name. Financial audits, altered invoices, wire transfers I'd never authorized. All time-stamped around the time Crow Holdings shoved me out. It wasn't messy or desperate. It was clean, precise. I knew this wasn't just a smear. It was framing, digital sabotage. Someone had built a quiet noose out of spreadsheets and time codes. I grabbed my phone and dialed Will, my old IT buddy from bar prep days. We hadn't spoken in years, but when he picked up, he didn't even hesitate. "You still good with metadata pulls?" I asked. "Depends. Who we burning?" "Not yet, just trace it. IPs, locations, I'll send everything." I dumped the files to a secure folder and sent them over. My hands didn't shake, but there was a hollow, heavy quiet in my chest. Like I'd stepped into a room I always suspected existed, but hoped I'd never find the door to. 20 minutes later, Will texted, "These weren't created from your logins. Traced back to a Crow exec, high level, credentials end in GDC 7. I froze. GDC. Gordon Daniel Crow, my father-in-law. The man who once called me a footnote with a law degree. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't personal disdain. This was professional assassination. Months of silent, calculated steps, pushing me out while planting false leads under my name. He wanted me erased, quietly. And now I knew. I walked to the den, opened my wife's laptop. It still synced to our old shared drive. She never changed the settings. Emails opened without prompting. There, buried in an innocuous folder, was a chain between her and her father. Vague subject lines, neutral tones, but one line stuck out. Her reply to him 3 weeks before my dismissal. "Just keep me out of it this time." So she knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just sat, letting the silence carve a path through me. Next morning, I was downtown across the table from my legal team. I laid out everything, the evidence, the timestamps, the betrayal. One partner leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You want to go scorched earth?" "No," I said, "not yet. I want to go lawful. Paper trail first. Let the receipts talk before I do." That night I sent a tip, anonymous, encrypted, to a respected journalist. Just enough detail to stir the waters. No names. Yet. I bought 3 encrypted drives. One stayed with me. The other 2 went in separate lockboxes across the city. This wasn't about clearing my name anymore. This was about stopping the machine. Late evening, the phone rang again. No ID. Silence. Then, breathing. Static. Like the calls after law school. The kind that made me sleep with the lights on. Someone had been watching this whole time. I said nothing. Let the silence hang. Then, just past 11, another call. This time, it was Gideon. "You don't want to do this," he said. "Not for pride." I didn't answer right away. Just stared at the city skyline out my window. "It's not for pride," I said. "It's for every name you've crushed along the way. I just happen to be the one with receipts." He didn't argue. He just hung up. And then 5 minutes to midnight, my phone buzzed again. A different voice this time, female, urgent. "You have 1 hour," she said. "I'm going to live with this story, with or without your comment." I stared at the screen, at the files, at the life I thought I had, now splintered across digital fragments. I still had time, but not much. The morning began with a ping, just one. I tapped the notification, saw the headline, then leaned back in my chair. It was done. The article had gone live, details, documents, timestamps. Gideon's fingerprints were all over the mess. News anchors couldn't talk fast enough. Commentators speculated, analysts scrambled, and yet I said nothing. The truth doesn't need my voice when it's loud enough on its own. By late morning, I walked through the doors of the downtown courthouse. Not to gloat, not to press charges, just to finish the one thing that still hung over my name, the formal expungement, the last remnant of the smear. Cameras waited out front, calling my name like I was someone they finally remembered. I didn't wave, I didn't pose. I just walked, head high, shoulders square. No more shadows behind me. Inside, the clerk handed me the stamped papers. Clean. It was quiet, not triumphant, just peaceful. On the drive home, a memory came back to me. My mother standing in the kitchen, hands in soapy water, saying, "Real victory is when you no longer need them to see you win." I didn't understand it then. I do now. Later that week, I drove to the new property just outside the city, a quiet estate, older than it looked from the outside. I bought it not for the square footage, but for the space it gave me inside. Each room had a new purpose now. What used to be a ballroom was turning into a legal mentorship lounge. Upstairs, one room was being soundproofed for girls who needed a place to sing, record, or just speak freely. The old library? It'd be for them too, first-generation college-bound girls, most with no quiet place to study. This wasn't about show. It was about roots. That afternoon, a courier delivered a letter from Gideon. Thick envelope, his handwriting, just like the notes he used to leave at board meetings. But this wasn't remorse. It was fear. Phrases like a chance to realign and perhaps reconsider the public narrative jumped off the page. I read it once, then slid it into the drawer without a second thought. He gave me a mirror of what I could become if I chose bitterness. I broke it. 2 days later, I was standing at the front of the classroom at the youth center. It was our third session of Contracts and Courage. High school girls, mostly juniors and seniors, we talked about clauses, credit scores, lease loopholes. But we also talked about silence, when to hold it and when to break it. One girl, no more than 17, raised her hand. "Do you regret anything?" I paused, looked out the window for a second before saying, "Only the time I spent waiting for approval I never needed." That answer hung in the room like gospel. Back in my office later, I sat under a framed quote I'd hung myself. "Success is not built in boardrooms, but in believing you still matter when others doubt you." That one stuck, because I knew it from both sides now. There was a time I would have done anything to be in those rooms, at those tables. Now, I was building tables, inviting voices that had been ignored, silenced, dismissed. That evening, with the city soft and gold in the windows, I took out a sheet of paper, wrote a letter to my younger self. I kept it simple, no overthinking, just truths I'd earned. You are enough. You will be tested. You are not for their approval. And you may walk alone, but you will walk forward. Be bold. I folded it and placed it inside the drawer of the old wooden desk I had restored by hand. Scratches still there, but smoothed. I stood, walked over to the window. The sun had nearly risen. It wasn't just morning. It was something new. Then came a knock. I opened the door. A girl, maybe 12, stood there, worn backpack, curious eyes. "Are you the lady who used to be called useless?" I smiled. Used to be.